Welcome to Teaching Artist Podcast, a show dedicated to discussions of teaching art to kids, making art, and how those things overlap and feed each other. I'm Rebecca Potts, your host, a visual arts teaching artist. Hi, are you also feeling like you're never quite catching up with all the things on your plate right now? Ooh, this week has been busy and tough. I hope you're getting more relaxation than I am these days. It's one of those times when I know I really need to just slow down wherever possible and take a little more time. So with that said, I am aiming to keep up with weekly episodes for just the next few weeks and then take a holiday break. But in all honesty, I am totally behind on editing and I might not get there for next week. I so appreciate you for listening and for following along as I get to know and showcase so many amazing teaching artists. It is truly an honor to keep building this platform and dream up more ways of supporting you. And along those lines, don't forget to submit your work for our winter juried exhibition at exhibit.teachingartistpodcast.com. This is the last week, so get those submissions in. We would love to see your work. Now, I am excited to share my conversation with Corbrae Smith. Just to give a little context, this episode was recorded during election week while we were waiting for results. Corbrae Smith is a middle school art teacher by day, dope afrofuturist illustrator by night. Based in Oakland, California, he is active in the local art scene and has created and contributed to many murals in the Bay Area. He spoke passionately about teaching and how he makes an impact with his students by continuing to push forward with his art career. We talked about critique both in the classroom and with our own artwork, the struggles of juggling these two careers, and making your own opportunities while also working to defeat your ego. Corbrae also talked about how anti-racist teaching is different for Black teachers and how exhausting it has been to educate white colleagues and help us along. He shared how he's so often been students' and even parents' first experience with a Black person in real life and has consistently faced and stood up to damaging stereotypes. He has to fight for the humanity, the complexity of just being human that is a given for white folks. Corbrae expressed it all way better than I can, so I'll get to the interview. But I do want to briefly say, especially to my fellow white educators, we need to step it up. Keep doing the work of confronting your biases and pushing the other white people in your life to do the same. Keep doing this work. Even when it's uncomfortable, lean into your discomfort. Okay, let's hear from Corbrae. All right, so I am here with Corbrae Smith, and I'm really excited to hear from you and get to share your story, your experience. And I always like to just start with hearing about your background and framing it as, how did you get into both art and teaching? How did they come together for you?
Yeah, the origin story,
Yeah.
at least for my artistic life, isn't super interesting. I feel like every time someone asks me that, they're looking for like this, in the gutter moment, like art was the one thing that saved me. But, art's been a thing that's been in my life for what seems like forever. I remember being 5 and drawing in my little lined notebook. So it's always been a constant in my life. I'm not sure what sparked my creative juices. I do know that, school was really hard for me, like really hard. I had an IEP. So I didn't get a lot of validation growing up
Hmm.
in school. And I have a twin sister, and
Oh, wow.
she's like the exact opposite of me. So I was like really bad in school. I say bad, but I mean, just learning was challenging. I'm a slow
Hmm.
processor and just slow on the uptake. I mean, she was always super fast, and everybody would like throw praises her way. And I think that art was like the one thing where I did get a lot of validation,
Hmm.
a lot of attention in that way. People said, wow, you need to draw Winnie the Pooh for me. Like, you're a good artist in school when kids want you to draw like Winnie the Pooh for their binders and
Oh, right.
put it in. Yeah, so art, and I guess I've been blessed in that way, knowing that art's always been the driving force. I knew when I was 11 that I wanted to go to the Academy of Art in San Francisco. Like I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I remember when I was 12 catching Bart with my dad and like talking to a counselor and like, how can I make this happen? And so like my path for the most part has always been figured out, although, it's definitely taken shifts and turns. I wanted to be an
Hmm.
animator when I was a kid, and I got the opportunity to take a class at the academy when I was 16 over the summer. And I took animation class, and then it was like the hardest thing in the world, and it took so much patience and like thousands of drawings. I'm like, oh, this is not for me. And I wanted to be like a
Right.
sculptor, and I realized, oh, this is for sure not for me, because hours it takes to like get your piece done. So it's just like always been shifting and changing, but I knew that I wanted to do something in the arts.
Right.
Yeah, and it got kind of dicey in college. I was the best artist at my high school, right? I feel like everyone who went to art school was like the best artist in their high school, one of the best artists, right? Like,
Hmm.
and we're just kind of cocky and like, no one can touch us. And then we get to art school, and I mean, there's just so many talents. And I was blown away by just the level of technique some of these kids had. And I'm like, how did you get this good? And college was humbling, and it was like a lot of blows to my ego, and realizing, like, why do we even have this ego? And just like wondering, is art really for me? What am I gonna do in the art industry? Because at the academy, they really push you to go to Lucasfilms or Pixar. And
Mm.
yeah, I've never wanted to work for anybody and do art. I feel like, I have my own ideas and my own passions and my own drives, and I want that to be seen in my art, and that can't happen if someone is dictating. So I just didn't
Hmm.
know what I was going to do. So, college got kind of scary, but yeah, just being really blessed. Teaching kind of fell onto me in a
Mm.
really interesting way. I didn't have a job for the majority of my life until I was 19. And I knew that I needed a job. I had a long distance relationship, and she was getting kind of upset with me because she was funding all the trips. I'm like, okay, I need to have a source of income.
Yeah.
And so I needed a summer job. I couldn't work during the school year because art school is surprisingly demanding. I knew I wanted to do something fun though. Like, I think I've been really hard headed in my life, in that I've never wanted to do anything that wasn't going to be enjoyable, wasn't going to be fulfilling in some way. And like, I didn't want to work at like Target or,
Hmm.
McDonald's. I wanted to do something that was just slightly more fulfilling. And I used to go to camp way back in the day. So I thought, camp would be the perfect thing over the summer. So I applied to this camp called Camp Galileo, which is an art science outdoors camp. I got in, which is great. It's like one of the bigger camps. And not having any experience with kids, like at all, I was definitely super nervous. I didn't know if they were going to think I was dumb, or if, like, if, because I wasn't like super cool in school. I didn't have like, a lot of friends or anything. So I didn't know if I was just going to be like this awkward person just leading them around, camp.
Right.
Yeah, and so my first week, I was expecting to get little kids. I thought, all right, if no one's going to judge me if they're 7 years old, there's no way. And so I got placed with a bunch of 12-year-olds. I'm like, oh, this is the worst, because 12-year-olds, I teach 12-year-olds right now, like, they
Yeah.
just roast machines. And so, I was definitely nervous. Didn't know how to handle a group of kids, had no behavioral management skills, none of that. But after that week, I mean, it was the most fulfilling, it was the most joyful. I don't think I've ever felt that level of like happiness.
Mm.
The bonds that we created in that week, I didn't know I was capable of that. And in that
Mm.
week, I started to really understand my power, and that art is something that naturally, drew me in. But also I have like this weird, one of my principals said I was like a walking icebreaker. I had this weird ability to like draw kids in. And like I'm noticing like this is like, wow, I'm actually really good at this, and I never knew that. And I didn't think about teaching, so I still thought I'm going to struggle as an artist. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to struggle. But I still needed money, and so I applied for an after-school program during the year. And I was a sub, and subs gets no respect. And I had to ride my bike to every school in Hayward, California, after school, where the kids are the crankiest. Yeah. And they don't know me. It's a different school every day, and just get them through that program. And that really like honed my ability to engage kids and connect with them. It didn't really help my pedagogy, but it definitely like I definitely gained the ability to walk up to any group of kids and win a level of trust. And I got really good at it.
Yeah, it sounds like trial by fire, sort of.
Oh, I'm forged. That's like the through line of my whole teaching career and my art career is just forged through fire.
Yeah.
Because after school you're a teacher. Like after school can be really hectic. And I think some of the strongest people in the world are after school program leaders, So, I did that for a while. And then I realized, I have these two talents. I really love art. I really love engaging with kids, and I want to create impact. I think as I got older, impact became like my big driving force. And so obviously I need to meld these two things together, and I've never been great at math. I don't really want to teach English. So obviously art is the thing I need to teach these kids. And so that was then like my goal. My future sight was on becoming an art teacher. And then I just went for it, and I'm here now.
Amazing. So then did you end up going back to school for an education degree, or like shifting your degree to be also art ed?
I fell into this trap when you graduate college and then you're like, you know what, I'm going to take a year off and I'll go back. But then it's like 2 years. You're like, no, I'm going to go back. But then it's like 3 years. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I just essentially never went back to school. I got my degree in traditional illustration, and I worked primarily in charter schools. And so, right, they don't require you to have a credential. And so my education and teaching came from teaching.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just as valuable as going to school and getting a credential. We do our PD works. We go off and learn from other teachers how to become more effective teachers. And, there's nothing like experience. I know a lot of first year teachers who come in with their credentials, and I mean, they still obviously have so much work to do. I mean, all teachers have a lot of work to do constantly, but experience I think is just as valuable. And so I'm now a 7-year teacher. I'm now currently in school because I have to be. A new California law says that, if you're gonna teach, you need to have a credential. That's fine.
Yeah, I don't have a credential, so same boat. Yeah,
power to us.
Yeah,
and that's the real force through fire. Mentality there. It's we didn't have like our mentor teachers, master teachers. We get thrown into a classroom, and as art teachers, I mean, I'm not sure if this experience is the same for you, but for the majority of my teaching life, I didn't get coaching. I was really seen as like a place filler. And I think that's kind of what art, unfortunately, is in a lot of schools. Like a time where teachers can go, take their break or planning time, and you have like 30 minutes. Luckily, my position has become a lot more serious over the years, but I didn't get coaching. So I just had to like figure it out.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, I'm a teaching artist. So I go into the schools, and the classroom teacher actually stays in the classroom with me, which means it's not coaching, but I do see, depending on the teacher, sometimes they kind of jump in and like manage the classroom, which is wonderful sometimes and not so great other times.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting just to see how, I mean, I see every teacher in the school, so I see the variety of how you can potentially handle different behaviors?
That was probably the hardest style of teaching for me. That was my first year teaching. That's how we did. I strolled
Yeah.
into the class, and if the teacher and me were cool, they would stick around and like do their work in class. And
Mm-hmm.
I think doing camp and doing after school programming really built up my behavioral management skills.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I had like charisma, and I thought that was going to take me all the way. But a good lesson will really calm a kid down. A bad lesson will destroy a classroom. And so I had really
Mm-hmm.
badly planned lessons. And there are times where teachers step in and control the classroom, and I'm feeling like, I feel a little defeated. Like I should be
Mm-hmm.
able to get this, right? Or
Right.
there are times where I know I got it, and I know that I have a really good relationship with the class, and I know the teacher's struggling, but I don't want to step in because I don't want to step on their toes. But I'm like, ooh, but if you just say this and this, then this can happen. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But yeah, I just wasn't super happy with that formula. I definitely wanted my own class.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely wanted respect as an art teacher. I didn't feel like I was getting a lot of respect as an art teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a hard one.
And I get it. There's less stakes for the real world in our class. We're not teaching for a test.
Mm,
There's no state funding depending on what we teach them. But I
right.
feel like we do, as art teachers, teach kids important life skills, how to persevere through challenges, how to think creatively.
Yes.
So I'm actually head of the art department of my school now. So like that's the one thing that I'm pushing, like high quality rubrics so kids know how
Mm-hmm.
to revise their work, how to create high quality work. What is high quality work? They need to know that when they get out there in the real world. So
Yeah. How to critique and how to handle critique.
that's a big
Yeah.
one. That's a big one. Because
Yeah.
the language is kids tend to, without coaching around how to give critiques, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, that looks really cool, except this part looks really dumb. Like they don't know how to
Right.
like at
Oh,
first when I was young, I'm like, what? Calling someone's work dumb would like hurt their feelings, right? But they're kids. They don't their brains just aren't there yet. But then I
yeah.
think back to like art school, and I had art teachers who wore the thick black glasses and like the turtlenecks, and they would come into class and like tear people's pieces up if it wasn't good enough. So I'm like,
Uh,
what's the difference here? Is there a difference here?
yeah, not really. I mean, what I would do is usually just ask them to give an adjective that's a little more descriptive than like cool or dumb.
Right. Exactly.
Tell me what about it is cool? What about it is not good?
And that's the thing. And then our job is to help them understand the language to explain why
Mm-hmm.
something needs work or why something's amazing.
Yeah.
So our job, we're teaching kids how to like communicate with each other, how to give people critical feedback. Like that's such
Mm-hmm.
an important skill set of how to not take things personally.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's hard. I'm still working on that.
I'm holding back tears constantly.
Oh,
Yeah.
especially this week. Oof.
Oh, yeah, it's been really rough. It's been really rough.
Hmm.
And I think in the art world right now in Oakland, everybody's really inclusive. Breaking into
Mm-hmm.
the art world here, it's definitely hard, but it's not as hard as it would be like New York, where you have to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, right? You just gotta
Mm-hmm.
like show up to a show, have your art, and then you can start your career that way. And
Mm-hmm.
there's just so many different skill sets, and I feel like the energy in Oakland isn't a highly critical one. I feel like a lot of people take feedback as a personal attack.
Hmm.
And I think feedback with your art is one of the most important aspects of creating.
Yes.
Right, because you may not have seen something that someone, like a path you could have taken that someone else has seen, or maybe you're stuck in this one type of design element and someone pushes you to break free from that. And, I definitely feel like in the art world, specifically in Oakland, that's our communities aren't doing that as much. It's kind of just like
Hmm.
accepting everyone's work, which is amazing and as we should, but we don't look at anybody's work through a critical lens. And I
Hmm.
kind of miss that. I love talking about art. Like, oh man, I love that you use these reds in this way in your composition, and your line weight. And like, I love breaking down pieces, but I feel like looking at art critically is almost frowned upon. It's so interesting.
Yeah. Is it something that you feel like you would want to push there or try to get started, some kind of local critique group or something?
I'm a part of a collective called Cybers and Kofa, and we've definitely talked about bringing in unfinished pieces and doing critique sessions around them. We just haven't, life is hard. We're going through an election that's lasted 45,000 years. We, like we're in a pandemic, just life is really hard. And I can understand why people don't want to hear something about their work. I get that because the world is telling us about ourselves right now. So what we have is our art right now. So I get that. So maybe after the pandemic and hopefully after somebody's out of office.
Yes. Thinking back to teaching, do you have tips that you would give a beginning teacher?
Yeah. Figure out what you want your class to look like. Not aesthetically, but figure out when your kids walk into class, what do you want them to be doing? When your kids are sitting down, what are they doing? When your kids are waiting for instruction, think step by step, how do you want the flow of your class to look? How do you want it to feel? How do you fill up dead space? How do kids access information in different ways? How do you use board? I've done coaching in a lot of art classes, and I think that's my biggest push. I found with art teachers, we all have really different philosophies, I know the art teachers in my network of schools, some believe in grading, some don't believe in grading, some believe in rubric work, some don't, some believe in lesson planning and unit planning in one way. So it's all very different. We're not like a unified front on that part, but I think what we can all agree on is we want a safe classroom where kids can feel like this classroom has a level of consistency, that they can always understand the objective of a classroom in multiple ways, and that they know that their teacher can control the classroom, can handle the classroom, and keep them safe. I know that my biggest thing when I started out teaching was it hurts a little to say it, but I just really wanted to be liked. But everybody wants to be liked,
Yeah.
And
it's human nature.
It's human nature,
Yeah.
And, I mean, there are some people who have the mentality of I'm your teacher, not your friend. But I'm a strong believer you can be both. I've had my favorite teachers were also my friends. I mean, and of course there's boundaries you have as an adult, right? We're not going to converse in the same way you converse with kids your age, but I have your back. You know what I mean? And when I was coming up as a teacher, my main focus was, I need you to know that I got your back. I'm one of the cool teachers. I'm Mr. C. I'm bomb. I'll go play tag with you, all that stuff. And I didn't have an issue, and I've never had an issue with kids liking me. I know I can go to a classroom and I know the kids will like me, but that also created really dangerous behaviors in my class. And I see that with other young teachers because they just want to be liked. And so sometimes engaging in conflict, whether it be productive or not, it's scary, and you don't want a kid to, react negatively to you. But I've seen kids in classrooms who can't get work done because it's just so loud, or things are being thrown around, or kids are running around, and they just want to know, do you got this? Can you control this so I can learn? Because they want to learn. At the end of the day, they want to be successful.
Yeah.
And so my biggest push is behavioral management is key. If we say that we love the kids, we have to show them that we love them by creating boundaries in the classroom, making sure that there's zero dead space in the classroom, that it's constantly engaging, and that you need to create boundaries and then never let anyone cross the boundaries that you set up in the classroom. So kids know okay, my teacher got me. My teacher will definitely keep me safe. And I know this classroom will always be a consistent, loving space for me. So that's the thing that I push. Know how you want your class to look, and know the boundaries that you're going to set up before you get to a classroom on your first day, and then dedicate yourself to never letting anyone cross that boundary, because then that's how you get that respect, and that's how you get that bond and that love.
Yeah. And do you feel like there's I feel like that's really good advice. But then I also, part of me is like, but what about making room for the kids to help create those boundaries, to help decide what works best for this class? And maybe each actual group of kids, like each class, it might be slightly different.
Oh, absolutely.
And how like challenging that is.
Yeah. So, so yeah, of course, like and that's the thing, like you teach long enough and you come up with classroom expectations, you kind of come across the same things, right? Like I feel like it evolves throughout time with the class. Like I teach 3 cohorts of kids, and each class is different because how they come in and that part of the day is different. Like kids in my morning class are always more calm, like just always a little bit
still
more
waking up.
Still waking up, like got the eye boogers and everything. Like they're usually the more docile group. And so, and there are certain things I do with that class that I won't do or won't expect from like my last class, which is typically the most like high octane, high energy, and so like those expectations definitely develop over time and always have student voice.
Yeah.
Because your classroom needs to be student centered always. I think there are set expectations that we as teachers need to always have, but my kids want to be able to earn music in my classroom. Absolutely. Earn it by doing this, that, and the third. We agree to that? Oh, perfect. My kids want to be able to like, I'm a really strong believer in kids should be able to engage socially while doing art because art is a social thing.
Yeah.
When they're in their group and like they spend so much time not being able to talk in math or not being able to talk in like English or not being able to really engage with each other that, I need my classroom to be a place where they can engage. And that's what they want too. Like the only reason why I really feel that way is because my kids pushed me on that, my younger years. Because, in the school system, they say, no, kids, your room is too loud. But there's a productive, loud,
Right.
So like, I definitely believe students should be able to absolutely hold voice when creating expectations.
Yes.
There's a level of agency and independence there that they need to be able to develop.
Yeah. And then that gives you more buy-in to what those expectations are.
Yeah. And, like how many adults truly listen to what you want?
Right.
I mean, sometimes they come up with some crazy stuff, or sometimes they come up like the music thing, right? Like, how can I give you music but also get what I want to? So like it's also a compromise, but like you're compromising with them, and that's not, especially with like Black and brown kids. I know my mom, I love my mom. My mom was like hard, and she said like it is my way or the highway. That's it. Full stop. And we treat kids like they're not actual people with functioning minds and autonomy and wants and needs and passions and loves, and they need to be able to express that. And that's where the I'm your friend also comes in, but also I'm your adult friend. So I'm gonna put some parameters around what you want because you're a child, and I think children are addicted to feeling really good, regardless if it's good for them or not.
Yeah.
Like in Zoom, like my kids would much rather be playing video games, and some of them only do that, instead of going to class.
Right.
And if you're not there to like actually put some barriers around those things that release those endorphins, then they're only going to choose the thing that make them feel good because they don't know how to have self-control yet.
Right.
But that's where like the friendship part comes in. It's like, I got you. I'm going to listen to you. But I'm also going to lead you in a way where you can get what you want in a way that's going to also teach you.
Yeah. And that skill of compromise is also a huge one that's hard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
My 5-year-old is kind of struggling with that right now with her little friends, like the few people that are in our sort of pandemic bubble.
Pandemic bubble. Gotta have one.
Yeah. I gotta have one.
Yeah, little kids. I've taught every single grade. So I've taught pre-K all the way up to high school.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how elementary school teachers do it. I don't know how preschool teachers do it. It's fun. They're like energetic. They're like, I love art so much. I can't wait. But like they also can't share pencils. And they also it's like teaching someone, I don't know, teaching someone how to be like a human versus
right.
You know what I mean? Like I say that with no disrespect, but with little kids, the simplicity of the issues,
Oh,
I can't vibe with it because it just takes too much energy. I feel like there's a complexity with middle schoolers and high schoolers, right? They're
yeah.
what they have conflicts with. I mean, that's that real social emotional work that's going to take them into adulthood, right? Like, how do I
Yeah.
deal with breakups? How do I deal
Mm,
with my friends like actually stabbing me in the back, or it's just them stabbing me in the back, or do they just have other friends and they're just taking a break from you for a second? Like, there's like
mhm.
actual real social emotional work there that's I just feel like is so valuable. The
Yeah.
little kids, whew, it's a much respect to you, Rebecca.
Oh, well, it's funny because I actually used to kind of feel the same until becoming a mom, and now it takes a lot of patience. But
Yeah.
I love elementary right now. But the thing I felt like was funny when you said that first was that I've talked to so many elementary art teachers that will say like, "Oh, I taught middle school for 1 year and oh my god, like I can't handle it."
Yeah, look, middle
Oh,
school is hard. Middle
it is
school is not,
hard.
and
It's
that's
a
the
hard
thing.
time.
It is like their bodies are doing weird things. They almost have
Mhm.
mustaches. Like everybody has mustaches. Like they stink a little bit.
Right.
And their brains are developing in a way where they start to have a high level of empathy, but like they also want to be really cool and like
Mm.
it's the time where they really want to play tag, but they won't let themselves. You know?
Hmm. Right, right.
Yeah,
That transition from like little kid to teenager, that's so hard.
it is. It is. And I think that's where me as an art teacher, really, really comes into play. Like I think that's the thing that intrigues me the most. It's like
Mm.
I guess being my teaching career being forged through fire, I really want to be in the spaces where it is hard.
Yeah.
Like the like fourth grade is I'm not gonna say it's easy because teaching in general is one of the hardest professions ever, right?
Mm.
But
Yeah.
I could go into a room of fourth grade. I'm a really big black guy. I have a full beard. I go to the gym. You know what I mean? Like so I walk in and unfortunately kids react differently to male teachers than they do to
Hmm.
female teachers. That's just what it is. Like I know that I off top get more respect. And that's just perception, right? And so I sometimes have an easier time, in the beginning, in the starting of a class because there's a level of intimidation until they realize that I'm like a super sweet teddy bear. I
Oh.
have fourth grade, I have a huge soft spot for like little kids too. So sometimes they can get away with some foolishness because I'm just like, oh, you're so adorable. But yeah, so like going into a classroom full of fourth graders, I feel like there's a level of ease there. It's that just having taught fourth grade, but going into a room full of eighth graders who have something to prove,
Mm.
you're like, you're going to earn my respect. There's a challenge there. I'm like, bet, I'm gonna get that respect too. Watch, you know what I
Oh.
mean? It's like and that's where like your pedagogy really comes into play. Like how good is my pedagogy? Like how good are my systems in class?
Hmm.
Because eighth graders don't pick up on those things as quickly or as readily as like a third grade class might,
Hmm.
from my experience. I just like that challenge, especially like in the art realm. Because art is harder in middle school also because they don't ever want to show their work, like ever.
Right.
They're so insecure
Uh,
about it. And so like that's
yeah.
that extra challenge too is like, am I good enough to get you to want you to show your art? Like, ooh, I'm not. Okay, how can I get better? What techniques do I need to learn?
And what would your kind of go-to methods be?
Constant critique sessions and revisions, like getting
Hmm.
them showing the work so often in the early stages
Yeah.
that by the time they get to the later stages, they've already shown so many iterations. I also create a lot of expert groups. And so kids who like mastered the standard then go around and start helping other kids out. And
Mm.
the big issue, I think, with kids is showing, like, they don't have an issue showing me their work. They have an issue showing their classmates. And
Right.
I think if they're getting help from their classmates, because they're like, because I refuse to help them. Like, I will not help you.
Mm.
I'm a big, like, release authority to the classroom kind of teacher.
Yeah.
So I try to create systems where the classroom eventually will run itself, which is
Mm.
hence the expert group. So if they want help, they have to go to another kid, you
Yeah.
know? And so that breaks down a lot of barriers And then they're excited to show afterwards because they're like, yeah, Isabella helped me. She really did this for me. Like I teach sixth grade right now, and they're really into giving appreciations. They love giving appreciations. So like, they're still like the in between
Right.
seventh and fifth. They'll still give you hugs.
Still pretty sweet.
It's still pretty sweet. Yeah, so it's all about constantly making them critique and revise, and then getting other kids to help, and like refusing to help them unless it's like a code red, and like they're in tears, and okay, let me help you out, buddy. I got you.
Yeah. I am jumping in here to remind you that there is 1 week left to apply to our winter juried exhibition. The deadline is December 13th, so get your submissions in. Submit your work at exhibit.teachingartistpodcast.com. The guiding theme for this show is change. How are you seeing change, coping with change, and being a change maker? We would love to be introduced to new artists. All submissions will be considered for our social media, podcast interviews, blog, and future opportunities. Artists working in all visual arts media and international artists are invited to apply. The show will be juried by the incredible artist and educator Chloe Alexander, who goes by the Hapless Printmaker on Instagram. She will be selecting works for the show and helping us select 8 artists to do an Instagram Live studio visit with. Then, Maria Coit and I will also be creating several lesson plans based on the themes in the show and on individual works in the show, and we will invite accepted artists to create optional brief videos about their process and inspiration. Videos have been such great teaching tools for me, which is what we would like to create. Maria and I are both artists, and we face rejection often. It's disappointing, but I also know that no one can get into every open call they apply to, so we just have to keep applying. As one way to give back to the artists who apply to our call and are not juried into the exhibit, we've asked our juror, Chloe, to offer feedback on all submissions. That's always one of the most frustrating parts of rejection for me, the not knowing what I need to improve. Was there something I could do better next time, or was my work just not quite a fit for this show? Our hope is that we can offer some helpful feedback for all artists who apply. Our dream for this exhibition space, Play Plus Inspire Gallery, is that it showcases and builds up contemporary artists of all experience levels, while also serving as a resource for teaching about contemporary art. We want to share your artwork and inspire young artists. We cannot wait to see your work. Submit your work at exhibit.teachingartistpodcast.com. And what's your teaching style with lessons and the way your classroom's set up? I know you're probably online right now, but...
Yeah, and it's not my favorite.
No.
Yeah, we're real project-based. I'm an integrator, so a lot of the work we do has to affect the community in some way. Like, I mean, it has to affect the community in some way, and it's always driven by what I'm doing artistically. So I'm a muralist. So I'm doing a whole bunch of murals in Oakland right now. I'm a part of these nonprofit groups that are putting up these murals in downtown. And so now I'm doing a lot of mural work with the kids. So it's always also depending on what I'm excited about. So my thing is, I come from a time where my high school art teacher, I love her, Miss Ellis, she introduced me to so many different types of art. I feel like the general consensus around art is either you draw or you paint, right?
Yeah.
But so like my sixth grade class or my seventh or eighth grade class, if we were in school, we would start by doing illustrations like portraits, discovering who you are. So it's a lot of social emotional work.
Yeah.
Then we do a lot of embroidery work. We start to work on quilts and talk about how quilts were huge in, slavery days in order to communicate for the Underground Railroad, and how can we bring values into our quilts and communicate to anyone coming into the space that they're welcome. Then we start doing lino cuts and then protest posters. around Islamophobia. And then we do mural work, all that then interlacing with like the 7 elements. If I were creating like foundational stuff, but like, especially my boys would have never have done embroidery. You know what I mean?
Right.
But they see a grown Black man out there like sewing. We make ugly dolls. I don't know if you ever heard of ugly dolls.
Oh, yes.
That's one of the scaffolds.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the scaffolds we have to the quilt. And so I'm out here making my cute little ugly doll like, ooh, there's so adorable stuff in it. And they're over here looking at me like that. And they're out here making their ugly doll too. So like we're breaking down like, masculinity. What does that even look like? Or like something that's really rough, like lino cuts. Like there's no going back once you lay in, your carving, and that's teaching kids how to persevere. So like, I like the idea of giving them full autonomy when it comes to creating, but I also think that, especially for the kids, so like I don't have an elective. Kids have to take art. And so for the kids who don't see themselves as artists, I feel like that's really intimidating.
Yeah.
Like I have this big hunk of clay. What I don't know. What do I do?
Right.
And then you have the other kid over here who's painting, and then another kid over here who's like, I don't know, 3D modeling. Like.
Yeah. It becomes, my challenge was that I don't have very much time with them, but the teachers that I feel like do it successfully, there's a ton of scaffolding to get there. So there's a ton of like the more teacher-led projects. There's a lot of that to lead up to total choice.
Well, I think I do that, but in reverse. So like the scaffolds are always a little bit more free. And then the final summative assessment is always more like a constrained thing. Like for their ugly dolls, they can literally create anything, any monstrosity they want. They seem to show me that they can do like the back stitch or whatever. Because I know that, kids also don't have a level of choice in their life. Like they are the least independent people on the planet. Everything is decided for them. And so I definitely understand like the power of choice in the classroom. And you usually don't get that in a math room or in a humanities room. And so it's our responsibility as art teachers. That's another thing I would tell, up and coming art teachers. Choice is really important.
Yeah.
I think freedom can be dangerous sometimes, the freedom of choice, because freedom of choice that's not structured.
Yeah.
I think it's a dangerous thing, but if you can structure that freedom, that choice, like you'll get so much buy-in. Like there will always be those kids who are like, I can't do this. This is the hardest. But like the majority or tier 1 kids are going to be like, this is the best thing ever. I love that I got to make this. I'm so proud of it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've talked a lot about teaching, but I still want to hear more. One big question and big thing that I'm trying to make sure I'm asking everybody is what your advice would be and how you're doing this, especially now with teaching online.
Yeah.
How you're in your teaching, decolonizing and creating, and I know there's issues even around that language, but creating an anti-racist environment within your teaching and within your classroom. And you already shared a bit of how you're doing this, but I'm curious what advice you would have for teachers that aren't as experienced there.
Yeah. So creating an anti-racist classroom is definitely like the buzzword of
I know.
Like everybody's saying it now, and I feel like my existence, it's different for me because I exist differently, as an art teacher. There, my white teachers have to go into that work differently, and I can't define that for them because who knows what biases they're holding, who knows how they're coming into that space. Even if they can understand their own intentions, they can understand that they have their white privilege and all that stuff, they can still, without realizing it, be focusing a little bit too much on the Black boys when it comes to behavior and not even understand like that's happening. And like that level of work, like, I think myself and the Black teachers, the African-American teachers at our school kind of decided to kind of like step away from that and have them figure that out.
Yeah.
Because this climate, what's happening right now in the world is not new to us. I think everyone is shocked and chagrined by how racist this country, like everyone is choosing Donald Trump. We're like, of course they are. The majority of white women are voting for Donald Trump. And people are like, I don't understand. I'm like, no, what? Obviously, this is what they're doing. This is what they've been doing since, since we got here. You know what I mean? And so like we understand and we're tired. And so when I think of anti-racism in the classroom, I mean, when I'm in the classroom, the fact that I'm there is anti-racist. It's interesting. I was asking my kids 3 years ago, how does it feel, or what did you think when I walked in the classroom? Am I your first Black teacher? And in so many ways, I've been like 1,000 kids' first Black anything. Yet when I worked at Camp Galileo, it was nothing but a lot of Asian kids, Indian kids, white kids, and they've never interacted with the Black person before.
Wow.
Right. And so one of the driving forces behind me teaching is like, I get to infiltrate these spaces and teach these kids, like, I'm their first experience with an actual Black person in real life. You know what I mean? I'm a lot of parents' first experience with a Black person in real life, and I'm not like this. I may look a certain way, but I'm not like this rough and gruff, violent human being. I'm a whole entire person with complexities. I'm silly. I'll sing. I walk around camp with a tutu on. You know what I mean? Like, and it's so disarming. And then, in my classroom, I was asking one of my kids, I said, yeah, Mr. C, you're my first Black teacher. And honestly, I thought you had a gun. I'm like, wow. Wow. They now know, like, when I get upset, they're like, Mr. C, you're not scary. And I'm like, great. I don't want to. And so being in these spaces is just so important. Like having Black teachers, Black female teachers, Black male teachers is super important, because Black children are viewed a certain way, but Black adults, especially Black men, were viewed as violent, were viewed as ignorant, were viewed as aggressive, all this stuff. And they need to see that we can be so many more things than what the country has defined us as. And, I mean, I'm not going to say that every Black teacher, when they enter in the space, is anti-racist. There's a lot of teachers of color who are lost in the sauce. There's a lot of Latino people who voted for Trump who super agree. Like a lot of Cubans, like colonization is a hell of a drug. And so I also talk about Islamophobia. I talk about homophobia. I talk about what's going on in the streets right now. How do we protest? I'm also like a practicing artist, and I make sure that I'm very visible, that the kids know that, like, when they go in downtown Oakland, they see this mural talking about Black Lives Matter. They see that mural talking about Black Lives Matter. That's their art teacher. Yeah. That they know that I'm about what I talk, And then implanting these issues into class and centering a lot of your art projects around the social issues is really important. So project-based learning, I think, is a really helpful tool. Like, making protest posters through screen printing makes complete sense. Then taking your kids down to the protests and having them screen print protest posters for people. Like, you're actually making a difference in that moment. And they're learning how to screen print.
Yeah. Amazing.
Which is like an industry. That's like a new wave that, it's happening in the Bay Area. It's happening, in a lot of places. People making their own shirts and starting companies that way. And this is like they're buying their through line through that, but they're also out there sending a message. They're also engaged politically. They're also engaged socially. They're also critically thinking about police. So it's like, make your projects centered around what's happening now. And then contextualize what's happening now with history. Like we're all history teachers. I teach my kids about police brutality now, and I juxtapose that with the 1990 riots, and I juxtapose that with 1965 and how police have historically been on the wrong side of history throughout our history. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know if that answered your question. I got real fired up. I don't know if that answered the question.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. I want to listen and give you that space. And there was so much in there that is really, really valuable and people need to hear. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for asking it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I love, there's a lot, but I love how you're talking about infiltrating with your presence and breaking stereotypes that way.
Yeah.
And I think the way you said it, that you're like, I am a whole being. I'm a complex human, just like we all are. Like, come on, people.
And it's crazy how you have to infiltrate white spaces in order for them to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's on the flip side, I don't, Rebecca, I'm sorry, what's your ethnicity?
Yeah, I was going to say, I should probably say, I think most listeners, if you've been listening for a while, know that I am also a white woman. I'm married to a Latino, which I don't usually mention, but so I have a little Latina daughter.
Yeah.
But yeah.
See, I think that's the thing. Like, Rebecca, I don't have to. I don't have to know you. I don't have to see you in person. I don't have to see any of your people to know that you are a whole entire person with emotions, with thoughts and dreams and all that. And I think that's the biggest part of colonization is that your humanity is seen, your humanity is known, and it is obvious to all of us. Whereas my humanity has to be experienced in order for it to be real. And I think kids seeing that, it's unfortunate that that's how it has to be, but us African American teachers, us Latino teachers, teachers who are like, we minority teachers have to be that, and we have to be in these spaces so these kids can see our humanity, know that we exist in a way that is not negative, and they need to take that on to the next generation and like lead with love, unlike how currently we're being led by hate.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully after this we don't just rescind back into our mire and just create the normalcy that we had before this all happened. We keep those rose colored glasses off and we engage with ourselves around our biases and around how we participate in racism and how we can disengage from that completely and totally, and help our kids do that also, so we can finally be a nation that lives up to what we've been talking about.
Yeah, because like you said, this is not new. It might be new to some of us to actually like wake up and realize what's been happening, but it's not new.
And that's the role of artists. We have to be able to create art that showcases what's happening right now and to like cement it and make it permanent. I think art is so important because we are the historians. We are the social commentators that last. Like people on CNN or whatever are like, saying some really mean things about Trump, but it's like, it's the murals, it's the artwork that's going to be, in the history books. It's going to be in the museums. It's going to remind people like, this is where we were at. And so like to all the artists out there, if you're still here 58 minutes later, I love you. You're still out here 58 minutes later. You must really mess with us. It's your job to make sure that you help remind people that this is where we are and we should never be here again.
Yes. And on that note, I want to hear more about your artwork. I know we're going long, but I feel like it's like we haven't really talked about your art at all. So I want to hear more. Maybe would you be able to describe your work for somebody who hasn't seen it? And I will link to it so we can go look at it, but I feel like this is always helpful to get like a little description.
Yeah. So, my art and my art name are definitely linked. So my art name is Hella Futures. My art is very Afrofuturistic. Afrofuturism is this concept that Black people exist in the future. If you watch any movie based in the future, you have like lizard men and you have like blue people. And you always have like one Black person or no Black people. You know what I mean? So like,
right.
So we can imagine a world that's so fantastical, but like it's too much to include people of color. And so Afrofuturism, there's books written about it. It's all that, there's a whole art wave around it. And I want to create, and what I do is I create portraitures of Black people in a way that is illustrative because I can only do what I know. I'm an illustration major. I really love pen and ink. I really love the art of just drawing and inking something. So I want to be illustrative. I want to be like a comic book. I want to showcase Black people in a way that's beautiful, in a way that we aren't seen, while also making it very modern, very futuristic. So,
yeah,
I want us to be viewed as people who are here and will be here, and I want to make our presence very bold. And so I use like a lot of color. And so, yeah, I want our presence to just be a focal point for the future. And so, yeah. And, I feel like we're in a box, right? I feel like, not that I feel like we are in a box. Black people are seen as, we like sports, like I'm a nerd. You know what I mean? I watch anime. I like space stuff. I'm always watching a space documentary. So like a lot of my work is centered in space. And I know a lot about space. Because Black people are also very knowledgeable about things that have nothing to do with entertainment, rapping. And so I want that to also be showcased, right? Like,
yeah, breaking those stereotypes again.
Right. So we have hella paths we take, hella futures that we can exist in. We are nerdy, we are cool, we are Trekkies. So like, I want my art to like represent. I mean, I think it's arrogant to say that my art represents holistically what Black people can be, but like I just want it to represent something other than what we are thought of.
Yeah, absolutely. And with your murals, you said you were working for several, like working with different nonprofits and also a collective that you mentioned. What was the name of that?
Yeah, so there's two It's
okay.
all so much. So
You're
there's two
busy.
collectives. And it's hard teaching, and I guess this is what this podcast is all about.
Yeah, like how do you do it?
How do you do it without sleeping?
Right.
So I have Sabr Sankofa. That was started by me and one of my really good friends, Salman. She's Pakistani, and I am African American. And so we combined Sabr, which means perseverance, and Sankofa, which is Ghanaian for telling your story and looking back. And then we just like expanded that to our network of people. And so we have a few amazing artists who are in that collective, and we have been doing a lot of plywood murals together. Plywood murals, if for those of you who don't know, which is interesting for you living in this time, plywood murals, a lot of places have been boarded up, and so it's such a beautiful time for art right now. So we've just been monopolizing on that. And then there is the other collective called MAM, which is multicultural and melanated. And that particular collective does bigger projects like painting stores and all that. And then there's BAMP, the Bay Area Mural Project. And they do a lot of amazing work. There's a lot of prolific senpai level artists there who are doing these huge, impactful murals. And I'm lucky enough to be around these folks and get to learn from them and get to be a part of these projects that are going to become part of Oakland's culture. When you walk in, you see a certain mural that's just always been there, and you just can't imagine it not being there. Like that's what they create. And that's what I strive for eventually, to be able to like get that type of work. But I'm just lucky enough to be a part of that. And it's predominantly Black, which is amazing. And we just create work for the people and for the culture.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how have you gone about sort of like seeking opportunities for your work?
It's hard. It's hard. I know one of your questions was any advice you would give to any artists who are looking for opportunities.
Right.
So, when I first started, it was really scary and really confusing. Like I didn't know how to get an opportunity. Like, how do I go and vend at a show? For anybody, like vending is just going to like some party and like selling your artwork there.
Right.
So like, how do I vend at this party? How do I do this, that, and the third? And it's all about community, right? So my first step was building my art Instagram. I think getting your art out there in general is the first step to opportunity. I know that I created my art Instagram, and then within 2 months I was hit up to do my very first art show.
That's awesome.
Right. And so it was hugely successful, which then created, so much confidence. And, it's not always going to be successful. There are days where I go to an art show and I sell work, or I go to attempt to sell work and I make no money. And there are times where I go and, I make way more than I thought I would. And it can be validating. It can be, you just can't take it personally when people don't buy your work. Your work's not for everyone.
Right.
Right. And so, But I'm at the point. I've been doing this, actually pursuing an art career for maybe 3 or 4 years now,
Mm-hmm.
and at this point, I'm just creating my own opportunities. It's going around asking. Like I have all my cards and I have a bunch of art, and I just go into like stores and I say, "Hey, can I paint your wall?" And they will either say yes or they will say no. Or I will ask someone if I can be a part of this show. And then you get to a certain point where people start like, you get a flow of work because people are asking you to be a part of the big cultural things happening in your city. So I think I'm very fortunate in that I think I put in enough work now where I'm very visible and I am being looked at as someone who needs to be a part of this show or a part of this show. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all about the grind. And so it's all about asking, it's all about taking the no's. And then eventually people will start coming to you.
Yeah, but that takes time. Yeah.
It takes so much time and so much time defeating your ego.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have an ego and do this.
Yeah.
Because your art will not resonate with everybody, and you have to be okay with that.
Right. There's this time of just kind of hunkering down and making.
Yeah.
Because you have to have something to take out there and show to everybody before you can even really like start this whole building your community, getting your work out there. Like, what work?
Yo, that's the part though.
Yeah.
Teaching, it's hard to teach and do that.
Yeah.
And so 2020 has been, like a dumpster fire in so many ways, but also it's allowed me, I have so much product that when we finally open up, like, 'cause I was definitely selling the same stuff for a while and I needed it to change. And I know a lot of artists can resonate with this. I finally got the time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of artist teachers, practicing artists and practicing teachers who are really out there trying to get it. Like, we finally have the time to sit down and make things and make our prints and make our shirts and get our stickers and all that stuff. So thank goodness for the pandemic for that.
Yeah. Although I feel like it varies a lot. Like having kids during this has made me have maybe less time.
I need to check my privilege.
Your non-parent privilege.
Yeah, I need to check it.
No, but I hear that too again and again from other teachers who, have been, I know some are back in person already, but those who are not and have been kind of like, okay, I'm at home and I can't really go anywhere and do anything. I've got studio time, like forced studio time.
That's the best studio time.
Yeah. And so much, I mean, I guess this is also a check your privilege thing. I was going to say like there's so much fodder right now, but maybe for some people it's more like I can't do anything. I have to just like focus on taking care of myself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Art can be so different for so many different people. Like
right.
some people feel like art is the thing that's helping their mental health right now. It's the thing keeping them centered.
Totally.
And for some people, it's like, I'm so distracted. I can't create. Everything is so bad right now. Like the flow is just not happening. And I'm glad I had to take my privilege in that sense, because if I wasn't able to create in this time, and it's almost been a year at this point we've been in the pandemic.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like I would have lost a part of me. So like to all those folks out there who have these creative blocks, and especially if it's been a pandemic long creative block, I'm so sorry. I'm here for you. I'm so sorry that's happening, and I will definitely check my privilege.
Yeah, that is so tough. Yeah, it's definitely for me. I use it as therapy. It's so helpful.
Yeah, it's one of the only things that can get us through. Like we have so much energy. Luckily, gyms are starting to open up again, but you have all this energy. You have to release it, right? And so, me and you, we can just go into our studios and just put that all out on however we create.
Yeah. And your space, did you already kind of work at home, or did you have a studio out of the home that like has that shifted because of the pandemic at all?
Yeah. So I used to work in my room primarily, but that I think I needed to separate myself from my room, especially during the pandemic, because I teach in my room. I live in my room. Like it's I need to be out. I can't paint on my bed anymore. It's just, especially, especially when the level of work becomes a lot greater, you get a lot more commission work, or your work is becoming more noticeable. I think at a certain point, you have to have a space dedicated to just creating art.
Yeah.
So I have a separate space in a different part of Oakland where me and my collective, we actually share the space, and that's where we create all our stuff now. And I didn't think having a studio would be a game changer, but having a dedicated space to just make stuff, it's the energy in there is different. Like I have my bad days, my sad days in my room, my frustrated days, but like when I'm in the art studio, it's just pure creativity. And that's where like all the paint is, and it smells like paint, like it's great. Like you shouldn't be sniffing paint. You gotta relax, but like let's not lie, like paint smells great. And so, it just smells like art. And like there's a whole bunch of other artists who share like different spaces near there, and the community is amazing. So being able to get out of my house and create in a different space, I'm glad I have the privilege of doing that, especially like in California where everything is so expensive. So I'm definitely feeling blessed that the art is doing so well that I can afford to have a space.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah.
Now, what does your time look like? What does a week look like for you?
Oh, it's all different. I think. So during the summer, I was teaching summer school. I was teaching English, but they were also paying me a ridiculous amount. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. If not, I would not have. But I'm like, over the summer, right? That was in the midst of all the protests. So it was teaching until 1, and then going to paint a mural until the end of the day, and then going to go draw a proposal, and then sleeping, and then teaching, and then going to finish a mural, and then getting another project. It was like at one point I was doing like several projects, like painting a store and painting a mural all at once, and it was a lot, and it was too much. I think I definitely overworked myself, and but like opportunity, it doesn't come very often. And as an art teacher, my biggest fear as an art teacher who's also trying to make it as an artist is that I'll get left behind. I think the reason why you and I talked so long about teaching is because that's my profession, right? I'll never lag on that, and that's something we're clearly super passionate about. We do that every single day.
Right.
We have to have a level of expertise about it. But and I came up with a few artists. I don't know if you ever heard of the freshman class, kind of like a thing.
No.
A lot of us came up in the Oakland art scene around the same time and started to gain some momentum around each other. We're all noticing each other. But I'm noticing, okay, we're all getting to the point now where we're getting really big projects, but I can't take this project or that project because I have to go and unit plan, or I have to be at this PD, or I have to be at this leadership meeting. And so like, my biggest fear is that I'm going to be left behind by the people who are just pure artists, they're struggling artists, their day job is art.
Yeah.
And so I have to work like extra hard to make sure that I can remain relevant, because I've also worked really hard to get to where I am. And so I'm going to go to the studio right after this because I have to put up a mural presentation. So it's like nights in the studio. It's doing things like the podcast, and I'm currently creating a piece for a podcast so they can use for their little thumbnail, right? So creating those and like making sure I'm staying true to contracts. So it's definitely an all-day thing. Teaching and doing this is definitely stressful, but I think at the end of the day, for us practicing artists and teachers, I think it creates more buy-in with kids.
Yeah.
Right? When the kids, like before I was actually out there trying to do art, my kids would say to me like, "Mister, you're not even an artist." And I'd be like, "You don't know," but I'd be like, "Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, you're right." Because I'm not, all my art was just on my wall. And like, I am an artist, but I can't say that I am a professional artist. I'm just somebody who draws and who teaches. And so it's about time to put your money where your mouth is. And now that my kids can now go into some movie theaters and see my work, they can see proof that their art teacher is somebody who actually does this. And now that they know that they have an art teacher who does this, they're now more willing to learn from.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like it's hard and it's stressful and it's not for everybody the level of work we have to put in, but at the end of the day, it's like it creates impact for your kids also, and it helps in that realm. And so like that's why I also push forward with being a professional artist.
Yeah.
Because, kids see that you don't have to just do sports, you don't have to just be a rapper. You can there's a path with art.
Yeah.
And I'm showing you that there's a path here.
And it's so inspiring for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially for us people of color. You don't see many of us out here, with like paint clothes on and, like just really sweating, just like putting our all into it. Cause and when it comes to Black people and art, it's usually music or acting or it's sports. And so I definitely see some of my Black boys looking at me without even realizing it, like, oh, this is something I can actually do. Now that's so exciting.
I love that. Yeah, because the art world is a pretty privileged place.
Yeah, you have to have a really cushy, safety net in order to really be able to do this full time,
Yeah. Well, knowing that you have to head to the studio, maybe we should start like wrapping up a little bit. So I have some kind of fun wrap up questions.
Okay.
One really broad one that I always love is, what are you curious about right now?
Ooh, like in general?
In general, it could be, I feel like I like it to just be broad and really open-ended. Could be about your work, your teaching, life. There's a lot to be curious about right now.
Oh, wow. Well, if you asked me last week, it'd be something different. This week, I'm just really curious when Joe Biden's going to not have 264 electoral college votes. When's that going to move up? So I'm just really curious, when is this going to end? Like, I think the thing that I'm really curious about, and that's kind of in the same vein, I'm really ready for something life-changing to happen in this country. And so I'm just curious to see, after this happens, is Donald Trump going to go to jail? Are we ever going to see his report card?
As you should.
His tax returns? What are we going to find out? Is there actually going to be a civil war? Huh. Interesting. So, no, these aren't things that I want to be curious about. But yeah, I mean, I am honestly happily waiting to see his tax returns and all that stuff. I really, really want him to be humiliated, but I'm a good person. Corbrae, stop. You don't want to. No, stop it.
Yeah.
I'm just really curious to see what's going to happen.
Yeah. I'm wondering if anybody will be held accountable for the many, many crimes.
What's going to happen if they're not?
Yeah. Not much.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that curious question is a hard one right now.
Yeah. Check back in a month.
Yeah. Okay, really fun, just silly question. What is your go-to order at your favorite restaurant?
So it's not recent anymore. For a year, I became a vegetarian, which is such a vegetarian vegan food is actually really good.
Yeah.
It's really good. So there's this place in Oakland called Solely Vegan, and it's just like vegan soul food, and it's not good for you. It's straight up just not good for you. But and so I always love black bean hamburgers, or I'll order anything with French fries. Anything with French fries. I'm a real big breakfast person, so the thing I've been eating the most from this spot called Pretty Lady in Oakland, like a cheese omelet with avocado and mushroom with hash browns, because potatoes are the best food.
Yeah.
With English muffins, which is the best toast. Some coffee, which is teacher's lifeblood. So
yes. Oh, yeah, that all sounds really good. Ooh.
I can't wait for tomorrow.
Yeah. And then last couple things, is there anybody you want to thank or give a shout out to? Yeah.
So, shout out to my mom. She recently just beat breast cancer.
Ooh,
which is
wow.
the big thing. Yeah.
Congratulations.
And she made sure that I got to art school. She paid for my dorm. She really supported me in that. And I wouldn't be doing this to the capacity that I'm doing it if she didn't help me get that opportunity and that access. So shout out to her. Shout out to Ashanti Branch. He was one of my mentors. My math teacher back in high school, he's one of the reasons why I'm teaching. His level of impact and care and love and effect on his students is what I want to mimic and emulate. So I appreciate him. Shout out to my school. I think as an art teacher, I've always felt undervalued, and they put me on a leadership team. They've made me the head of the art department. Like, they've definitely shown me what my value actually is, and had me look at myself in a way that's way more kind. And so shout out to my whole teaching community, and shout out to my students. I love you guys. And two more. Shout out to my art homies. You know who you are, Cypress and Kofa. And shout out to you, Rebecca, for creating the space.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And last one, where can our listeners connect with you online?
Oh, Hella Futures. Instagram.
Yep.
I do not have a website. I'm tackling in my brain, is it worth having a website or not? So for right now, you can definitely slide into my DMs, hit me up, talk to me about anything you want to talk to me about. That's where you can find all of my art. Hella Futures, Instagram. Awesome.
Yeah. And I feel like if it's working for you and a website is a lot of trouble for you, then
just
I don't know.
If it's not broken, why fix it?
Right. Exactly. Thank you so much, Corbrae. This was amazing. I feel like, we talked about a lot of teaching, but so much. I'll have to catch up with you another time and hear more about your work.
I appreciate you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Corbrae. I loved his idea of using expert groups in the classroom to encourage students to share work with each other, give more autonomy to students, and offer opportunities for advanced students to showcase and improve their knowledge while helping struggling students. There's just so much to this method. Corbrae, I am totally stealing it. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can reach me at Teaching Artist Podcast on Instagram or teachingartistpodcast@gmail.com. Who do you want to hear from? Please share your recommendations of teaching artists. And if you loved this episode, please subscribe, leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow me. It really makes a big difference. Thank you.